Victoria Hale's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered across the marble floor. $50,000 worth of Italian heels frozen mid-step as Chicago's most feared CEO swayed like a broken marionette. The ballroom fell silent. Power suits turned away. Board members pretended not to see. In a room built on dominance and fear, weakness was unforgivable. But Ethan Cole, the quiet single father who'd spent 3 years invisible in these circles, saw something else entirely. A woman drowning in front of 500 people who'd rather let her sink than risk getting wet themselves. If you're watching from your city tonight, drop a comment below and hit that like button. I want to see just how far Victoria's story reaches, and I promise you, what happens next will change everything you think you know about power, redemption, and second chances. The Sinclair Foundation Gala wasn't the kind of event where things went wrong. It was the kind of event where everything was engineered to go right, from the temperature of the Veuve Clicquot to the exact angle of the chandeliers casting gold light across Chicago's elite. 600 guests, each representing either old money or new power, filled the grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel like pieces on a chessboard, and everyone knew exactly which square they occupied. Ethan Cole occupied the square marked Invisible. He stood near the back corner by the silent auction tables, nursing a club soda and trying to look like he belonged. His suit was decent, off the rack from Men's Warehouse, altered by his neighbor Mrs. Park for $40, but decent was a long way from the custom Armani and Tom Ford surrounding him. At 32, Ethan had learned that fitting in wasn't about what you wore. It was about the confidence that came from having nothing left to lose. He'd lost everything 3 years ago when Emma died. Not everything, he reminded himself, glancing at his phone. The lock screen showed his daughter Lily, age 7, gap-toothed and grinning in her soccer uniform. She was at his sister's tonight, probably conning Aunt Sarah into a second dessert. Lily was the reason he still got up in the morning. She was the reason he was here at all, pretending to network at an event where his company's entire annual revenue wouldn't cover the cost of the centerpieces. Ethan Cole? A woman in a burgundy cocktail dress appeared beside him, squinting at his name tag. You're with TechBridge Solutions? Yes, ma'am. He straightened slightly. We develop accessibility software for... How nice. Her smile never reached her eyes. Excuse me, I see someone I need to speak with. She disappeared into the crowd before he could finish his sentence. Story of the night. Story of the last 6 months, actually, since he'd been trying to break into this world of venture capital and corporate partnerships. His software could help thousands of people with disabilities navigate technology more easily, but that didn't matter if he couldn't get anyone to listen for more than 30 seconds. Emma would have known what to say. She'd always been the extroverted one, the bridge builder, the woman who could strike up a conversation with a lamppost and have it eating out of her hand within minutes. Ethan was the behind-the-scenes guy, the one who solved problems in code and let his wife handle the human element. Except now there was no Emma. There was only him, a failing startup, a daughter who needed braces next year, and a growing suspicion that he was completely out of his depth. The crowd shifted, and that's when he saw her. Victoria Hale. Everyone saw her. You couldn't not see her. She cut through the ballroom like a yacht through harbor traffic, red dress blazing, dark hair pulled back in a way that probably cost more than his car payment. She was on the cover of Forbes last month. The Ice Queen of Chicago Finance, they'd called her, though some of the less creative blogs just went with the bitch who built an empire. Hale Industries had revenues in the billions. Victoria herself was worth somewhere north of $600 million, depending on which gossip column you believed. At 43, she'd built an empire through ruthless acquisition, flawless execution, and a reputation for firing people before they even realized they'd made a mistake. Ethan had never wanted to be anywhere near someone like that, but he couldn't look away. She was holding court near the center of the room, surrounded by a shifting constellation of executives and politicians. Her laugh was sharp, controlled, the kind of laugh that made you want to be in on the joke and terrified you weren't. She held a champagne flute in one hand, gestured with the other, and every person in that circle leaned in like she was dispensing the secrets of the universe. Terrifying, isn't she? Ethan glanced over. A man about his age, round-faced and sweating slightly in his tuxedo, had sidled up to the auction table. More like intimidating, Ethan said. Same thing, in this room. The man stuck out his hand. David Chen, I'm with Northwestern's development office. which means I spend these events begging rich people for money while they pretend to care about higher education. Ethan shook his hand. Ethan Cole. I'm in tech. Ah, the magic word. Everyone in Chicago either wants to fund tech or shut it down, depending on whether they understand it. David grabbed a stuffed mushroom from a passing waiter. So, which category does your company fall into? Probably the too boring to explain at a cocktail party category. David laughed. Actually laughed, not the polite chuckle Ethan had been getting all night. Honest, I like it. You hear trolling for investors? Something like that. You? Trolling for donors who want their names on buildings. Same hustle, fancier vocabulary. David's gaze drifted toward Victoria. Although I'd settle for 5 minutes with the Ice Queen, she gave Northwestern $2 million last year, and rumor has it she's looking to expand her philanthropy portfolio. Ethan studied Victoria more carefully. She'd moved on from the executive cluster and was now talking to an older couple, her posture perfect, smile fixed. But something about the smile bothered him. It was too rigid, too bright. Does she seem okay to you? He asked. David squinted. What do you mean? I don't know, just something's off. Dude, she's Victoria Hale. Off is her natural state. Woman probably schedules her bathroom breaks 3 weeks in advance. David clapped Ethan on the shoulder. Listen, I've got to go corner a hedge fund guy before he escapes to the bar. Good luck with the tech thing. He vanished into the crowd, leaving Ethan alone with his club soda and his growing sense that something was wrong. Victoria was laughing again, but the laugh was different now, louder, with a manic edge that didn't match the controlled woman from 10 minutes ago. Her champagne glass was empty. A waiter materialized with a replacement. She took it without looking at him, took a long drink, and swayed. Just slightly. Just enough that the man she was talking to, some silver-haired executive type, glanced at her with concern. She waved him off, said something Ethan couldn't hear, and drained half the glass. Around the room, other people were starting to notice. Ethan could see it in the way conversations paused, the way eyes flickered toward Victoria and then quickly away. In a ballroom full of predators, blood in the water was both fascinating and dangerous. No one wanted to be seen watching, but no one could quite look away. Victoria's handler, a thin, severe-looking woman in her 50s, appeared at her elbow, whispered something urgent. Victoria shook her off. Actually shook her off, a sharp jerk of her arm that sent champagne sloshing over the rim of her glass. Oh boy, someone nearby muttered. The thin woman tried again, more insistent this time. Victoria spun on her and Ethan caught a glimpse of her face, flushed, eyes too bright, jaw set in fury. She said something that made the handler flinch. Then Victoria turned and walked away. Not toward the exit, not toward the restrooms, just away. Toward the edge of the ballroom, toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, her red dress a flag of distress in a sea of black tuxedos. The handler stood there for 5 seconds, frozen in the paralysis of someone who'd just realized they were in over their head. Then she pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. Ethan set down his club soda. He told himself it was none of his business. Victoria Hale had an army of assistants and handlers, and probably a goddamn crisis management team on speed dial. She didn't need help from a guy who barely rated a second glance in this crowd. But he thought about Emma, about the night she'd collapsed in their kitchen, brain aneurysm, no warning, no chance to say goodbye. About how he'd found her on the floor, still warm, already gone. About the weeks after when he'd walked around like a ghost, and people had looked away because grief made them uncomfortable, because weakness was contagious, because it was easier to pretend they hadn't seen. Victoria reached the windows. She pressed one hand against the glass, steadied herself. Her other hand still held the champagne flute, which she raised to her lips and emptied. The glass slipped from her fingers. It fell in slow motion, or maybe that was just how Ethan's brain processed it, tumbling end over end before exploding against the marble floor. The sound cut through the ballroom like a gunshot. Music stopped. Conversations died. 600 heads turned in unison. Victoria didn't seem to notice. She stood there, hand still pressed against the glass, body swaying. Then she took a step. Her heel caught on the train of her dress. She stumbled, caught herself against the window, and slowly, so slowly it was painful to watch, slid down until she was sitting on the floor, red dress pooled around her like blood. The ballroom held its breath. Ethan waited for someone to move. Anyone. The handler. The executives who'd been hanging on Victoria's every word 10 minutes ago. The waiters, the event staff, someone. No one moved. They all stood there, frozen in the collective understanding that powerful people weren't supposed to fall apart in public. That witnessing weakness from someone like Victoria Hale was dangerous for her, yes, but also for them. Because if the Ice Queen could crack, what did that say about the empire she'd built? About the deals they'd made with her? About their own carefully constructed facades? So they looked away. They turned back to their conversations. They pretended they hadn't seen. Within 30 seconds, the music started again. Within a minute, the low rumble of networking filled the space. Victoria Hale, CEO of a billion-dollar empire, sat on the floor by the windows while Chicago's elite stepped carefully around the broken glass and moved on with their evening. Ethan was moving before he'd decided to move. He crossed the ballroom, weaving through clusters of people who refused to acknowledge what was happening. No one tried to stop him. A few people glanced at him, then away, grateful someone else was dealing with it. The handler saw him coming and visibly relaxed, as if his willingness to get involved absolved her of responsibility. Victoria didn't look up when he approached. She was staring at her hands, which were shaking. "Ms. Hale?" Ethan crouched down, careful to keep his voice low. "My name is Ethan Cole. Are you all right?" Obviously. Her voice was hoarse, words slurring slightly. "I'm fantastic. Having the time of my life. Do you need medical attention?" She laughed, a brittle, broken sound. "I need everyone to fuck off and leave me alone." "Okay." Ethan glanced around. The handler was hovering 10 feet away, phone pressed to her ear. Other guests flowed around them like water around rocks. "Can I call someone for you? Family? A friend?" "Don't have those." Victoria finally looked up at him. Her eyes were bloodshot, mascara smudged. "Don't need them either." "Well, everyone needs someone." How profound. Did you get that from a fortune cookie? Ethan absorbed the hit without flinching. He'd spent enough time around Lily's tantrums and his own grief to recognize lashing out as a defense mechanism. "I have a car," he said. "I can take you home. No press, no photos, no one who'll sell this story to the gossip blogs. Just a ride home." Victoria studied him. Despite the champagne and the smudged makeup and the trembling hands, her gaze was sharp, assessing. He wondered what she saw, probably some nobody in an off-the-rack suit angling for an advantage. A good Samaritan act he could leverage later. "Why?" she asked. "Because I've been where you are. Not the billionaire part, but the falling apart in public part. And when it happened to me, people looked away." He held her gaze. "I'm not going to do that." Something in her expression shifted. Not gratitude, she wasn't there yet, but maybe recognition or curiosity or just exhaustion. "Your car better not be a piece of shit," she said. "It's a 2015 Honda Civic. It's clean, it runs, and the air conditioning works." "A Civic?" The corner of her mouth twitched. "My first car was a Civic, 1999. Drove it until the transmission gave out." "Good cars." "Yeah." She closed her eyes. "Yeah, they are." Ethan stood and offered his hand. She stared at it for a long moment, as if the simple act of accepting help was a foreign concept. Then slowly she reached up and let him pull her to her feet. She swayed immediately. Ethan caught her elbow, steadying her. "Jesus," she muttered. "When did the floor get so tilted?" "It's the champagne's fault. Everything's the champagne's fault." She tried to step forward and nearly pitched sideways. "Fuck these shoes. Want to take them off? And walk barefoot? Do you know how much this floor costs to maintain?" "More than my car, probably." Oop. That got a real laugh out of her. Short, surprised, genuine. "You're funny." "I don't like funny people." "I'll try to be more boring." "Too late. You've already ruined it." She gripped his arm tighter. "Where's your car?" "Valet parking." "Can you make it to the exit?" Victoria glanced across the ballroom. The distance couldn't have been more than 100 feet, but from the look on her face, it might as well have been a marathon. Every person in that room would watch her leave. Some would pretend they weren't watching. Some would pull out their phones. By tomorrow morning, this would be everywhere. "No choice," she said quietly. "Let's go." They started walking. Ethan kept his pace slow, his grip on her arm firm but not controlling. He could feel her trembling, whether from alcohol, adrenaline, or humiliation, he couldn't tell. Maybe all three. Every few steps she wavered, and he adjusted, became her ballast, kept her upright. People stared. Of course they stared. Victoria Hale, being escorted out of a gala by some nobody, was too good not to stare. But Ethan had spent 3 years being invisible, and he knew how to use it. He didn't make eye contact, didn't acknowledge the whispers, just kept moving, kept Victoria moving, until they reached the coat check. "Do you have a coat?" he asked. "Fur, silver fox, probably cost more than your entire wardrobe." "Comforting." She gave him another one of those assessing looks. "You're not intimidated by me at all, are you?" "Should I be?" "Most people are." "I'm not most people." "Clearly." She accepted her coat from the attendant, who very carefully didn't react to Victoria's disheveled state, and let Ethan help her into it. "Although I should warn you, I might throw up in your clean, functioning Honda Civic." "I have a daughter. I'm prepared for bodily fluids." "A daughter." Something flickered across Victoria's face. "How old?" 7. "You're married." "Widowed." The word hung between them, heavy and final. Victoria's expression shifted again, that same recognition from before, but deeper now. Understanding. "I'm sorry," she said, and for the first time that night she sounded completely sober. "Me too." They stood there for a moment in the marble foyer, two broken people holding each other up. Then Ethan guided her toward the exit, and they stepped out into the Chicago night. The valet brought Ethan's Civic around, bless him. The kid didn't even blink at the sight of Victoria Hale climbing into a car that probably cost less than her shoes. Ethan tipped him $20 he couldn't really afford and slid into the driver's seat. Victoria was already buckled in, head tilted back against the headrest, eyes closed. The streetlights painted shadows across her face, highlighting the exhaustion carved into every line. "Where do you live?" Ethan asked. "Gold Coast, Erie Street. The building with the doorman who looks like he could break you in half." "I know the one." Everyone knew the one. It was the kind of building that made you feel poor just walking past it. Ethan pulled into traffic, heading north on Michigan Avenue. The city rolled past, late-night diners and dive bars giving way to upscale boutiques and luxury condos. The distance between Ethan's world and Victoria's measured in city blocks. They drove in silence for several minutes. Ethan kept glancing over, making sure she was all right, making sure she wasn't about to fulfill her threat to redecorate his interior. "Why aren't you grilling me?" Victoria asked suddenly. "About what?" "About what happened. About why Chicago's Ice Queen just had a very public meltdown. About whether this means Hale Industries is in trouble, or if I'm having a breakdown, or if I'm an alcoholic." She opened her eyes, turned to look at him. "Everyone will be asking those questions tomorrow." "Why aren't you asking now?" Ethan considered his answer carefully. "Because it's none of my business. And because sometimes people just have bad nights. They don't owe anyone an explanation. People like me don't get to have bad nights. We're supposed to be perfect all the time. That's a lot of pressure. It's the job description." "Sounds like a shitty job." Victoria laughed, really laughed this time, the kind that bent her forward and made her shoulders shake. "Oh my God, nobody talks to me like this. Nobody." "Maybe they should." "Maybe." She settled back against the seat, some of the tension draining from her body. "How did your wife die?" The question was direct, unfiltered. Most people danced around it, used euphemisms, looked uncomfortable. Ethan appreciated the honesty. "Brain aneurysm, no warning. She was fine 1 minute, gone the next." He kept his eyes on the road. "I found her in the kitchen. Lily was at school. Emma was just there, on the floor." "Jesus." "Yeah." The light ahead turned red. Ethan stopped, finally looked at her. "It's been 3 years. Some days I'm okay. Some days I'm not. Today's actually been pretty okay until about an hour ago. When you decided to rescue a drunk CEO. When I decided to help someone who needed it." Victoria held his gaze. In the red glow of the traffic light, she looked younger, vulnerable, human. "I wasn't drunk," she said quietly. "I mean, I was, but that's not why I fell apart." "Okay. You're not going to ask why? Do you want me to?" She thought about it. The light turned green. Ethan drove. "My mother died 6 months ago," Victoria said finally. Cancer. I spent 2 years watching her disappear piece by piece, and then she was gone. And I didn't cry. Not at the funeral, not at the wake, not once. Everyone said how strong I was, how impressive, how inspirational. But you didn't feel strong. I felt nothing, just empty. Like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left a shell walking around pretending to be Victoria Hale. She pulled her coat tighter around herself. Tonight was supposed to be fine. I was supposed to be fine, but I was standing there in that ballroom, surrounded by all those people, and all I could think was that my mother was dead, and I didn't even cry. And what kind of monster doesn't cry when their mother dies? The kind who had to be strong for too long. That's generous. It's true. Ethan took the turn onto Erie. After Emma died, I went 3 months without crying. I was busy. Lily needed me. There was a funeral to plan, insurance to sort out, 100 things that required me to function. And then one day I was doing dishes and I dropped a plate, one of the plates from our wedding registry, and I just broke. Sat on the kitchen floor and cried for an hour while my sister watched Lily in the next room. What happened then? I cleaned up the plate. I went back to functioning. And eventually functioning turned into something that felt almost like living again. He pulled up in front of her building. The doorman was watching through the glass doors, clearly unsure what to make of Victoria arriving in a Civic. It gets easier, not better exactly, just easier to carry. Victoria nodded slowly. She didn't move to get out of the car. I have 40,000 employees, she said. Do you know how many of them I actually talk to? I mean really talk to, not just the quarterly earnings bullshit? How many? None. I don't have friends. I have associates. I don't have family. I had my mother, and now she's gone. I built this empire, this life, and somewhere along the way, I forgot to build anything real. She looked at him. You're the first person in 6 months who's talked to me like I'm a human being. You are a human being. The board of directors might disagree. Then the board of directors can go fuck themselves. Victoria's eyes widened. Then she laughed again, that same surprised, genuine laugh. I like you, Ethan Cole. I like you too, Victoria Hale. They sat there in the car, the engine idling, Chicago's lights reflecting off her building's glass facade. Two people who'd spent so long being strong that they'd forgotten how to be anything else. You should go in, Ethan said gently. Get some sleep, drink water. Take tomorrow off if you can. I have an 8 a.m. meeting. Cancel it. I can't. She stopped herself. Actually, I can. I'm the CEO. I can do whatever the hell I want. Exactly. Victoria reached for the door handle, then paused. Thank you. For not leaving me there. For not taking pictures. For not treating me like the Ice Queen. You're welcome. She opened the door, then turned back. Your company. TechBridge Solutions. What does it do? Accessibility software. We help people with disabilities navigate technology more easily. Send me your information. My assistant's name is Margaret. Tell her I said to schedule a meeting. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. She stepped out of the car, steadier now. Besides, I owe you for not letting me throw up in your Civic. That's a low bar for a business meeting. Welcome to my world. She leaned down, looked at him through the open door. You're a good man, Ethan Cole. Don't let this city change that. She closed the door and walked toward her building. The doorman sprang into action, holding the door open, nodding deferentially. Victoria didn't acknowledge him. She just walked inside, shoulders straight, head high, the Ice Queen again, even in a wrinkled dress and smudged makeup. Ethan sat there for a moment, watching her disappear into the elevator. Then he pulled out his phone and texted his sister. On my way home. How's Lily? The response came immediately. Asleep. Conned me into 2 desserts and a chapter of Harry Potter. You're raising a master manipulator. She gets it from her mother. How was the gala? Ethan looked up at Victoria's building, thought about champagne breaking on marble floors, about 2 broken people finding each other in a room full of sharks. Interesting. Tell you tomorrow. He put the car in drive and headed home, back to his neighborhood where the buildings didn't have doormen and the apartments didn't have lake views. Back to his real life, where tomorrow he'd wake Lily up for school and make her lunch and try to figure out how to keep his company from going under for another month. But for the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel invisible. And somewhere in a luxury condo overlooking Lake Michigan, Victoria Hale stood in front of her floor-to-ceiling windows, still wearing her red dress, finally allowing herself to cry. Ethan woke up the next morning with his phone buzzing against the nightstand like an angry wasp. 6 a.m. He groaned and reached for it, squinting at the screen. 12 missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize, 23 text messages, and a notification that he'd been tagged in 47 posts on social media. His stomach twisted before he even opened the first one. The photo was grainy but unmistakable. Him helping Victoria Hale into his Civic, her red dress vivid even in the low light of the parking garage. Another showed them in the car, her head tilted back against the seat, him in profile. The captions ranged from curious to vicious. Mystery man rescues Chicago's ice queen. Victoria Hale's public meltdown. Who's the nobody playing hero? Billionaire CEO seen leaving gala with unidentified man. Relationship? Scandal? Or just another charity case? Ethan set the phone down and pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. This was what he got for helping. This was what he got for giving a damn when everyone else had looked away. His private life, his face, his decade-old Honda Civic, all of it now fodder for gossip blogs and social media vultures. His phone rang again, a Chicago area code he didn't recognize. Against his better judgment, he answered. Ethan Cole? A woman's voice, sharp and professional, the kind that probably got paid to make people uncomfortable. Who's asking? Rebecca Torrance, Chicago Tribune. I'm writing a piece about last night's incident at the Sinclair Gala. I'd love to get your side of the story. How do you know Victoria Hale? What were you doing at the event? Can you comment on the nature of your relationship? There is no relationship. I helped someone who needed help. That's it. Witnesses say you spent quite a bit of time with Ms. Hale before leaving together. Others reported seeing intimate conversation. We talked, like human beings do. That's not a crime last time I checked. Mr. Cole, surely you understand the public interest in... What I understand is that a woman had a bad night, and instead of helping her, 600 people pulled out their phones. I'm not going to feed that machine. His voice came out harder than he intended. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a daughter to take care of. He hung up before she could respond, and immediately regretted it. That probably sounded defensive. Defensive meant guilty. Guilty meant more questions. He was terrible at this. Another text came through. This one from David Chen. Holy shit, dude, you're trending. Hashtag Ice Queen Meltdown. What happened after you left? Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't explain what had happened in the car. The vulnerability, the shared grief, the strange intimacy of two broken people acknowledging their brokenness. That wasn't for public consumption. That was private, and he was going to keep it that way. A new message appeared. Unknown number. I'm sorry about the media circus. This is my fault. Thank you again for last night. I meant what I said about the meeting. V. Just like that, the knot in his chest loosened slightly. He typed back. Are you okay? The response came within seconds. Define okay. My head feels like someone's performing experimental surgery, and my assistant has called me 6 times in the last hour to discuss crisis management. But I'm alive. That's something. Is the press bothering you? A few calls, nothing I can't handle. You shouldn't have to handle it. This is my mess. I'm the one who fell apart in public. We both made choices last night. I don't regret mine. There was a longer pause this time. Ethan watched the 3 dots appear and disappear twice before her response came through. Neither do I. Margaret will be in touch about scheduling. He stared at those words for a long moment. Neither do I. It wasn't much, but it felt like something. Like acknowledgement that whatever had happened between them in that car, the honesty, the connection, had been real for her too. The bedroom door creaked open. Lily stood there in her unicorn pajamas, dragging her stuffed rabbit by one ear, hair sticking up in 6 different directions. Dad? Why are you awake so early? Just checking some work stuff, baby. Come here. She climbed onto the bed and burrowed into his side. She smelled like the lavender detergent Sarah used in kid shampoo. Aunt Sarah called me yesterday, Lily said, her voice muffled against his shirt. She said you helped a lady who was sad. Ethan's throat tightened. Yeah, I did. Was she nice? I think so. I don't know her very well yet. But you helped her anyway? Yeah. Lily pulled back to look at him, her expression serious in that way 7-year-olds sometimes were. Mom used to say that's what good people do. They help even when it's hard. Your mom was right. I miss her. Me too, baby. Every day. They lay there together as the room grew lighter, and Ethan thought about Emma, about how she'd find the good in this somehow, turn it into a lesson about compassion or human connection. She'd always been better at that than him, better at seeing the best in people, better at believing things would work out. Can we make pancakes? Lily asked eventually. Only if you promise not to eat all the chocolate chips before they make it into the batter. I don't make promises I can't keep. You taught me that. He laughed despite everything. Fair enough. Come on. They made pancakes together, Lily standing on her step stool at the stove, carefully pouring batter into misshapen circles, while Ethan tried to keep his phone from buzzing itself off the counter. More messages, more calls. A few from his own team at TechBridge, asking if the rumors were true, if he'd really spent the night with Victoria Hale. He ignored them all. By mid-morning, he'd dropped Lily at a playdate with her friend Mia and was sitting in his apartment staring at his laptop. The TechBridge pitch deck was open, but he couldn't focus. His mind kept drifting back to Victoria's penthouse, to the way she'd looked standing at those floor-to-ceiling windows, to the rawness in her voice when she'd talked about her mother. His phone buzzed. Margaret. Ms. Hale would like to schedule a meeting to discuss TechBridge solutions. Are you available Tuesday at 10 a.m.? Ethan's heart kicked. This was real. This was actually happening. Tuesday works. Where should I meet her? Hale Industries headquarters, 40th floor. Ask for me at reception. I'll send calendar details shortly. Thank you. He sat back, trying to process. 4 months of rejection, VCS who wouldn't return his calls, investors who looked at accessibility software like it was a charity project instead of a business. And now Victoria Hale was giving him a shot, because of one night, one honest conversation. Sarah called 20 minutes later. You're all over the internet, she said without preamble. I know. The comments are brutal. People are calling you everything from a gold digger to a stalker. I know that too. Are you okay? Ethan rubbed his face. I don't know. This whole thing is insane. I gave someone a ride home and now I'm being dissected by strangers. Welcome to dating someone famous. I'm not dating her. I barely know her. The internet doesn't care about facts. They care about narrative. Sarah's voice softened. But for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. And if this Victoria person has any sense, she knows it too. She does, I think. You think? We texted this morning. She apologized for the media attention, said she still wants to meet about TechBridge. So she's keeping her word. That's something. A pause. Ethan, be careful. Rich people aren't like us. They live in a different world with different rules. I'm not worried about her money. I know you're not. That's what worries me. You see the best in people, even when you shouldn't. Someone has to. After they hung up, Ethan spent the rest of the weekend working. He revised his financial projections, tightened his pitch, rehearsed answers to every question he could imagine Victoria's investment committee asking. By Monday night, his eyes were burning and his coffee intake had reached concerning levels, but the deck was solid. Better than solid. It was good. He picked Lily up from Sarah's house Monday evening. His sister took one look at him and frowned. When's the last time you slept? I slept. Ethan? I napped. That counts. Sarah pulled him into the kitchen while Lily played with her cousins in the living room. You're going to make yourself sick. This meeting is important, but not more important than your health. I'm fine. You're running on fumes and anxiety. That's not fine. She crossed her arms. What are you so afraid of? The question caught him off guard. He leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted. What if this is my only shot? What if I blow it and go back to begging VCs who won't even look at the data? What if TechBridge fails and I can't help the kids who need it? Then you'll figure something else out. You always do. Emma would have known what to do. She was good at this stuff, the networking, the pitching, making people care. Emma was great at a lot of things, but she's not here. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. You are. And you're doing amazing, even if you can't see it. You built something real. You're helping people. Don't let fear make you forget that. Ethan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Besides, Sarah added, if this Victoria Hale invests in you just because she feels guilty about the gala, that's not the kind of investor you want anyway. You want someone who sees the value in what you've built. The rest is just noise. Tuesday morning dawned cold and clear. Ethan put on his funeral suit, the only decent one he owned, and took the train downtown. Chicago slid past the windows, neighborhoods shifting from residential to commercial, the skyline growing closer. He'd lived here his whole life, but the loop still felt foreign sometimes. All those glass towers full of people making decisions that affected thousands of lives. And here he was, a guy from Bridgeport trying to play in their world. Hale Industries occupied floors 38 through 42 of one of those glass towers. Ethan rode the elevator up, watching the numbers climb, trying to keep his breakfast down. The doors opened onto a reception area that probably cost more than his entire apartment. Ethan Cole, he told the receptionist, I have a 10 o'clock with Victoria Hale. The woman, young, impossibly put together, smiled professionally. Of course. I'll let Margaret know you're here. Please have a seat. He sat in a chair that was somehow both beautiful and uncomfortable, watching executives move through the space with the kind of purpose that came from knowing exactly where you belonged. He'd never felt more out of place. Mr. Cole? He looked up. Margaret stood there, mid-50s, steel-gray hair, the kind of presence that suggested she could manage a natural disaster without breaking a sweat. That's me. Margaret Reed, Ms. Hale's assistant. Thank you for being punctual. She shook his hand with a grip that could crack walnuts. Ms. Hale is running a few minutes behind. Can I get you anything while you wait? Coffee? Water? Water would be great. She led him to a conference room with windows overlooking the Chicago River. The view was dizzying, boats cutting through the gray-green water, buildings reflecting off each other in an endless mirror of glass and steel. He set up his laptop and tried to calm his racing heart. The door opened. Victoria walked in. She looked nothing like the woman from the gala. The red dress and smudged makeup were gone, replaced by a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his car. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful. Her makeup was flawless, her expression neutral. She was the ice queen again, every bit the CEO who'd built a billion-dollar empire. But when she saw him, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe relief. Ethan, thank you for coming. Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Hale. Victoria, please. She sat across from him, and there it was again, that moment of acknowledgement, of shared history, before the professional masks slid back into place. Before we start, I want to be clear about something. What happened at the gala stays between us. This meeting is about TechBridge, nothing else. Understood? Understood. Good. Now show me what you've got. He pitched. He walked her through the technology, the market analysis, the user testimonials. He showed her videos of kids using the software, their faces lighting up as they gained the ability to communicate in ways that had been impossible before. He talked about Emma, about Maya, about the 300 families whose lives were different because someone had finally built something that worked. Victoria listened, really listened, in a way most investors didn't. She took notes on her tablet, asked questions that showed she'd actually read the materials he'd sent, pushed back on assumptions in ways that made him think harder. Your pricing is too low, she said when he finished. We want to keep it accessible. Accessible and sustainable aren't mutually exclusive. Right now you're losing money on every subscription. That's not a business model. She pulled up a spreadsheet on her tablet, turned it to face him. If you raise your individual tier to $29 and restructure your institutional pricing with volume discounts, you'd hit profitability within 6 months while still remaining affordable for most families. But the families who can't afford $29, you build in a sliding scale from day one, financial assistance for qualifying families. Write it into your operating budget, make it part of your mission statement, and market it as a feature. She looked at him directly. You can't help anyone if you're out of business, Ethan. Sustainability isn't a luxury, it's a requirement. He stared at the numbers on her screen. She was right. Of course she was right. He'd been so focused on keeping costs low, on making sure no one was excluded, that he'd built an unsustainable model. The very people he wanted to help would lose everything if TechBridge went under. Okay, he said. That makes sense. I know it does. A hint of a smile. I'm very good at this. Clearly, Victoria set down her tablet. I want to bring this to my investment committee 2 weeks from today, but I need you to revise your projections, incorporate the pricing changes, and stress test your growth model. Can you do that? Absolutely. It won't be easy. My committee will tear this apart looking for weaknesses. They'll question your team size, your market penetration strategy, your technical scalability. You need to have answers. I'll have answers. She studied him for a long moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone more polished, more practiced, someone who'd spent years learning how to talk to people like me. She leaned back in her chair. But you just show up and tell the truth. It's refreshing, also slightly terrifying from a business standpoint. I'm not good at pretending. I've noticed. She stood, and he followed suit. Margaret will send you the meeting details. Prepare like your life depends on it, because in some ways it does. My committee doesn't give second chances. She extended her hand. He shook it, and for just a second she held on. Ethan. Her voice was quieter now, less CEO and more human. What you did at the gala, helping me, not taking advantage, not selling photos to the tabloids. She paused. I won't forget that. You don't owe me anything. I know, that's why it matters. She released his hand. See you in 2 weeks. He left the building feeling like he'd run a marathon and won. The October air was crisp, the city alive with lunchtime traffic and construction noise and the smell of food carts. He walked to the train instead of taking it immediately, needing to move, to process. His phone buzzed. Sarah. How'd it go? Good, really good. She wants me to pitch to the investment committee in 2 weeks. Ethan. That's amazing. Don't get too excited. Still have to convince a room full of finance people that accessibility software is worth their time. You will. I believe in you. He smiled at the screen, then noticed another message. Victoria. You did well today. Your passion for the work shows. Use that in the committee meeting. They respond to conviction. Thanks, and thank you again for the opportunity. Stop thanking me. You earned this. Now don't waste it. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan lived at his desk. He rebuilt the financial model, ran sensitivity analyses, created backup plans for every scenario he could imagine. His team helped where they could, but mostly it was just him and the numbers and the gnawing fear that he'd get one detail wrong and blow everything. He met Victoria for coffee 4 days before the committee meeting, not at Hale Industries, but at a small shop in Wicker Park, the kind of place where the baristas had visible tattoos and the espresso machine looked like it had survived a war. Victoria walked in wearing jeans and a cashmere sweater, her hair down for the first time since he'd known her. She looked younger, more real. This place is a health code violation waiting to happen, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. It's got character. It's got questionable stains on the floor. Those add to the character. She laughed, and he caught a glimpse of the woman from the car, the one who'd cried about her mother and admitted to being empty inside. They ordered coffee, his black, hers with too much cream and sugar for someone who claimed to take it black at the office. Victoria pulled out her tablet. Walk me through the committee dynamics, she said. You need to know who you're dealing with. For the next hour, she broke down each member. Donald Chambers, the CFO, who cared only about returns. Patricia Wong, who'd made her fortune in healthcare and actually gave a damn about social impact. Marcus Reynolds, who'd vote however Victoria told him to because he owed her a favor. 2 others who were wildcards. Patricia's your ally, Victoria said. Lead with the impact metrics. Show her the testimonials. Donald will push back on everything, but that's his job. Don't take it personally. And you? I'll recuse myself from the vote. Conflict of interest, since we... She trailed off. Since we what? Victoria looked at him over her coffee cup. Since we know each other, outside of business. Is that what we're calling it? Knowing each other? What would you call it? Ethan thought about that night in the car, about the vulnerability they'd shared, the grief they'd acknowledged, about these coffee meetings that felt less like business and more like something else entirely. I don't know, he admitted, but it's something. Something, Victoria repeated. That's wonderfully vague. I'm not good at this. The whole figuring out what things are thing. Neither am I. She set down her cup. My last relationship ended 8 years ago. He wanted someone who'd be home for dinner and remember anniversaries and care about things that weren't quarterly earnings reports. I couldn't be that person. What if you could be now? What makes you think I've changed? Because you're sitting in a coffee shop with questionable floor stains instead of working. Because you spent an hour teaching me how to navigate your investment committee instead of just sending an email. Because you're trying. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I am trying. I'm just not sure what I'm trying for. Maybe you don't have to know yet. Maybe trying is enough. She smiled, small but genuine. You're very wise for someone who drives a 15-year-old Civic. The Civic is 12 years old, thank you very much. And wisdom has nothing to do with what you drive. Spoken like someone who's never experienced heated seats. They talked until the coffee shop started closing, about everything and nothing, about Lily's upcoming school play, about Victoria's nightmares of board meetings, about whether deep dish pizza counted as actual pizza or was just tomato soup in a bread bowl. It was easy, comfortable, like they'd known each other for years instead of weeks. When they finally left, Victoria walked him to his car. The street was quiet, just the distant hum of traffic and the smell of rain coming. I'll see you Friday, she said. 10 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. I won't. She started to turn away, then stopped. Ethan, I'm glad you helped me that night. I'm glad it was you. Me too. She walked to her own car, something sleek and German that probably cost more than he'd make in 5 years. And he watched her drive away before getting into his Civic. His phone buzzed as he started the engine. Sarah, Lily wants to know if your friend can come to Sunday dinner. What friend? The lady friend. She's been talking about her all week. Says she wants to meet the person who makes you smile at your phone. Ethan looked at the last text from Victoria, just a simple good night that had come through while he was putting Lily to bed last night. I'll ask. No promises. She's going to say yes. I can feel it. You're not psychic. I'm a mother of 3 and a lawyer. Same thing. Friday arrived faster than Ethan was ready for. He stood outside the Hale Industries conference room at 9:55, suit pressed, pitch deck loaded, trying to remember how to breathe. Margaret appeared. They're ready for you. He walked in. 5 people sat around the table, Victoria at the head. She met his eyes briefly, gave the smallest nod. Then her expression went neutral. Mr. Cole, she said formally. Please proceed. He pitched. He showed them the numbers Victoria had helped him refine, the impact metrics, the user stories. He answered Donald's skeptical questions and Patricia's enthusiastic ones. He made his case for why accessibility technology wasn't charity. It was good business, underserved market, loyal customer base, potential for growth. 45 minutes later, he finished. The committee asked more questions, debated among themselves. Finally, Victoria spoke. Thank you, Mr. Cole. We'll deliberate and be in touch within the week. He left feeling like he'd run a marathon backward. He had no idea if it had gone well or if he'd just crashed and burned in front of Chicago's financial elite. His phone buzzed in the elevator. Victoria, you did well. Now we wait. How long? However long it takes. Patience isn't your strong suit, is it? Not even a little bit. Mine either. Want to grab terrible coffee tomorrow morning? Ethan smiled at his phone. Yeah, I do. The vote came back on Wednesday. Unanimous approval. $2 million, Series A funding, board oversight, the whole package. Ethan read the email 3 times before he believed it. Then he called Victoria. Congratulations, she said. You earned it. We did this together. No, you built something worth investing in. I just recognized the value. A pause. There's one condition. His stomach dropped. What condition? Sunday dinner at your sister's. Lily's been asking my assistant about it, apparently. How does Lily have your assistant's contact information? She called the main office line and charmed the receptionist. Your daughter is terrifyingly competent. She gets that from her mother. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. You don't have to come. Family dinners are chaos. I know. That's why I want to. Victoria. I'm tired of eating alone, Ethan. I'm tired of perfect silence in my perfect apartment. I want noise. I want chaos. I want to remember what normal feels like. Her voice was quiet now. Is that okay? He thought about Sarah's warning, about different worlds and different rules. He thought about the media attention, the scrutiny, the complications. Then he thought about Victoria crying in that hallway, admitting she was happy for the first time in years. Yeah, he said. It's okay. It's more than okay. Good. What should I bring? Just yourself. And maybe lower your expectations significantly. She laughed. See you Sunday, Ethan Cole. See you Sunday, Victoria Hale. He hung up and stood there in his apartment, looking at Emma's picture on the shelf. She was smiling, always smiling, and he could almost hear her voice. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to move forward. I want you to live, not just survive. I'm trying, Em, he whispered. I'm really trying. And for the first time in 3 years, he believed it might actually be true. The coffee shop on Clark Street wasn't the kind of place Victoria Hale would normally be caught dead in. The chairs were mismatched. The floor had a permanent scuff pattern from years of foot traffic, and the espresso machine made a sound like a dying animal every time the barista pulled a shot. But it was 2 blocks from Ethan's office, and when Margaret had called to schedule their meeting, Ethan had suggested neutral ground. Victoria arrived exactly on time, which somehow didn't surprise him. She wore a charcoal business suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent, her hair pulled back in that same severe style from the gala. But her eyes were different, less sharp, more uncertain. Ethan stood when she walked in. She spotted him immediately, wove through the cramped tables, and stopped a few feet away, as if unsure of the protocol for meeting someone who'd seen you at your absolute worst. Mr. Cole, she said. Ethan, he corrected. Please. Ethan. She glanced around the coffee shop, taking in the college students hunched over laptops and the construction workers grabbing their afternoon caffeine fix. This is different. Sorry, I know it's not exactly… No. She cut him off. I like it. It's real. They sat. A teenage barista with purple hair appeared, looking completely unfazed by the fact that a billionaire CEO had just walked into her establishment. What can I get you? She asked Victoria. Coffee, black. Size? Victoria blinked. Large? We call that a big boy here. You want a big boy? Ethan watched Victoria process this information, saw the exact moment she decided to roll with it. Yes, I want a big boy. Awesome. The barista turned to Ethan. The usual? Please. She disappeared behind the counter. Victoria raised an eyebrow. You have a usual? I'm here most mornings before Lily's school. They know me. They called the large coffee a big boy. They call the small one a lil guy and the medium a regular Joe. The owner thinks it's charming. It's ridiculous. Yeah, Ethan smiled. But you ordered one anyway. Victoria's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. I did, didn't I? Their drinks arrived. Victoria took a sip of her coffee and made a face. This tastes like it was brewed in a boot. It's terrible, Ethan agreed. But it's cheap and strong, and they don't kick you out if you sit here for 3 hours working. You come here to work? Sometimes, when my apartment gets too quiet. Victoria nodded slowly, like she understood exactly what he meant. She set down her coffee and pulled a sleek tablet from her bag. All business now. So, TechBridge Solutions. Tell me about it. Ethan had given this pitch 100 times. He had slides, statistics, projected growth curves. He could talk about market penetration and user acquisition and all the other buzzwords that made investors' eyes glaze over. But sitting across from Victoria in a coffee shop that called large coffees big boys, none of that felt right. My wife was a teacher, he said instead. Special education. She worked with kids who had cerebral palsy, autism, developmental delays. Smart kids. Brilliant kids. But the technology they needed to communicate, to learn, to just exist in a world built for everyone else, it was either too expensive or too complicated, or both. Victoria leaned forward slightly, listening. One of her students was a girl named Maya, 12 years old, nonverbal, used an eye-tracking device to communicate. The software cost her family $23,000. $23,000. And it was clunky as hell, crashed constantly. The tech support was based overseas and didn't understand the actual needs of the users. Ethan met Victoria's eyes. Emma used to come home so frustrated. She'd say, Someone should build something better. Someone should give these kids a voice that actually works. So you did. So I tried. After she died, I had to do something. I couldn't save her, but maybe I could help kids like Maya. He pulled out his phone, opened the TechBridge app. Our software uses AI to predict communication patterns, adapts to individual users, costs a tenth of what the big companies charge. We've got 300 users right now. We're profitable enough to keep the lights on, but not enough to scale. Victoria took his phone, studied the interface. Her fingers moved across the screen, testing features, pulling up menus. She didn't say anything for a long time. "This is good work," she said finally. "Important work. Why are you struggling to find investors?" Because important doesn't always mean profitable. Most VCs want to fund the next social media app or crypto scheme, something that'll give them 1,000% return in 3 years. Accessibility software for disabled kids isn't sexy. It's not disruptive. It's just necessary. Necessary is what builds empires. Victoria handed back his phone. Sexy is what crashes and burns when the market corrects. Try telling that to the investors I've pitched to. I'm an investor. I'm telling you. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Hope, maybe. Or just surprise that someone was finally listening. Hale Industries has a venture capital arm, Victoria continued. We typically invest in late-stage companies, but we've been looking to diversify into impact investing, companies that solve real problems for underserved markets. She pulled up something on her tablet. What's your current runway? 6 months. Maybe 8 if I don't take a salary. Team size? 4. Me, 2 developers, 1 part-time designer. Revenue model? Subscription-based, $19 a month for individuals, tiered pricing for schools and institutions. Victoria made notes, asked more questions. The conversation shifted from personal to professional, but not in a way that felt cold. She was genuinely interested, digging into details about user retention and development costs and partnership strategies. This was her element: analyzing, calculating, finding the angles others missed. Ethan found himself matching her energy, getting excited about the possibilities in a way he hadn't in months. They talked for over an hour, until their coffees were cold and the purple-haired barista was giving them looks that suggested maybe they should order something else or vacate the table. "I want to do this," Victoria said abruptly. "A formal pitch to our investment committee. 2 weeks from now. Can you put together a proper deck?" "Yes." Ethan's heart was racing. "Absolutely. Don't make me regret this." "I won't." Victoria started packing up her tablet, then stopped. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you help me that night? Really? You had nothing to gain from it. You could have walked away, let someone else deal with it." Ethan thought about his answer carefully. "Because I know what it's like to feel invisible. And I know what it's like when the one person who really saw you is gone. You looked like both of those things at once, invisible to everyone in that room, and missing someone who used to see you." He shrugged. "I couldn't walk away from that." Victoria's expression did something complicated. Her eyes got bright, but she blinked it away quickly. "Well, thank you. Again." "You're welcome. Again." She stood, smoothed her suit jacket. 2 weeks. Margaret will send you the details." "I'll be ready." Victoria nodded and headed for the door. She made it 3 steps before turning back. "Ethan?" "Yeah?" "That big boy coffee really does taste like it was brewed in a boot." "I know." "Same time next week?" He smiled. "Same time next week." She left, and Ethan sat there in the coffee shop, staring at his phone where the TechBridge app was still open. The purple-haired barista came by to clear their cups. "That lady's intense," she said. "Yeah." "She your girlfriend or something?" "No, I don't know what she is." "Well, she drinks shitty coffee with you, so she must like you at least a little bit." Ethan laughed. "That's a low bar." "Hey, it's something." The barista grinned and headed back to the counter. That night, Ethan told Lily about the meeting while they made spaghetti together. She stood on a step stool by the stove, carefully stirring the sauce while he boiled pasta. "So this lady's really rich?" Lily asked. "Very rich. Like buy a pony rich? Like buy 1,000 ponies rich." Lily's eyes went wide. "Whoa. But she's also really smart, and she thinks our software can help a lot of people." The one for kids like Maya? Ethan's throat tightened. Lily had only met Maya once at one of Emma's school events, but she'd never forgotten her. Yeah, baby. Like Maya. Mom would be happy about that. Yeah, she would. They ate dinner on the couch, watching a nature documentary about octopuses. Lily fell asleep halfway through, her head on Ethan's shoulder, and he sat there holding her, thinking about Victoria and TechBridge, and the strange way life sometimes gave you second chances when you weren't looking for them. The 2 weeks passed in a blur. Ethan worked 18-hour days putting together the pitch deck, refining projections, preparing for every possible question Victoria's investment committee might throw at him. His team helped, but the weight of it sat mostly on his shoulders. This was it, the real shot they'd been waiting for. The night before the pitch, he couldn't sleep. He kept running through his presentation, finding flaws, second-guessing every slide. At 2 a.m, his phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Stop overthinking it. Your work speaks for itself. Get some sleep. He stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed back. How did you get my number? I'm a billionaire. I can get anyone's number. That's mildly terrifying. Good. Use that fear tomorrow. Channel it into confidence. Is that how you do it? The reply took longer this time. I channel it into control, but I'm beginning to think your way might be healthier. Ethan smiled at his phone in the dark. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow. Don't fuck it up. He didn't fuck it up. The presentation room at Hale Industries was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. A table that could seat 20 abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than Ethan's car. The investment committee consisted of 5 people, all of them looking at him like he was a particularly interesting science experiment. Victoria sat at the head of the table, giving nothing away. Ethan pitched. He showed them the numbers, the user testimonials, the growth potential. He talked about Emma and Maya and the 300 families whose lives were different because of TechBridge. He was honest about the challenges, the limitations, the risk. When he finished, there was silence. Then a man in his 60s, Donald something, Ethan had forgotten his last name, leaned back in his chair. It's a nice story, Mr. Cole, very heartwarming. But we're not a charity. What's the exit strategy? Acquisition, Ethan said. The major tech companies are all trying to break into accessibility. They've got the resources, but not the expertise or the community trust. In 3 to 5 years, TechBridge will be valuable enough that someone like Microsoft or Apple will want to buy us to legitimize their accessibility programs. Or they'll just build their own version and put you out of business, a woman across the table said. They could try, but they've been trying for a decade, and they're still not where we are, because this isn't just about code. It's about understanding the actual needs of disabled users. That takes time and relationships you can't shortcut. The questions kept coming. Ethan answered them all, feeling more confident with each one. This was his life's work. He knew it inside and out. Finally, Victoria spoke. Thank you, Mr. Cole. We'll discuss and get back to you within the week. That was it. He was dismissed. He gathered his laptop, shook hands around the table, and walked out feeling like he'd either nailed it or completely bombed it and couldn't tell which. Margaret met him in the hallway. Ms. Hale would like to see you in her office. Ethan followed her down a hallway lined with photographs of buildings Hale Industries owned, developments they'd built, projects that had reshaped Chicago's skyline. They stopped at a corner office with a view that made Ethan's stomach drop just looking at it. Victoria was standing by the windows, still in full CEO mode. Close the door, she said. He did. That was a good pitch, she said, not turning around. Strong, honest, you didn't oversell. Thanks, I think. The committee will vote yes, I'll make sure of it. You can do that? I'm the CEO. I can do a lot of things. She finally turned to face him. But I need you to understand something. If we invest in TechBridge, this becomes a real business. No more operating on hope and fumes. You'll have board oversight, quarterly reviews, performance metrics. It won't be your little passion project anymore. I know. Do you? Because a lot of founders talk a good game about scaling up, but then they balk when the reality hits. They want the money without the accountability. I want both, Ethan said. I want to grow this thing into something that actually changes lives at scale. I want to hire more developers, partner with more schools, Reach kids in rural areas who don't have access to any of this technology. I can't do that alone. Victoria studied him for a long moment. You really mean that? Every word. Something in her posture relaxed. She walked over to her desk, pulled out a folder, and handed it to him. Term sheet. Look it over with a lawyer. Don't sign anything until you've had it reviewed. Ethan opened the folder. The numbers made his head spin. Series A funding. $2 million. This is... He couldn't finish the sentence. It's what you need to build something real. Victoria sat on the edge of her desk. And it's what I need. What do you mean? She was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Since my mother died, I've been running on autopilot, acquiring companies, making deals, building the empire, but none of it means anything. It's just money making more money. She gestured to the view behind her. I have all of this, and I don't have a single person who gives a damn about me as anything other than a source of capital or power. That's not true. Isn't it? You saw what happened at the gala. I fell apart, and 600 people looked away. My assistant called my car service. My board members sent flowers the next day with notes about hoping I was feeling better. Not one person actually checked to see if I was okay. She met his eyes. Except you. Don't say you're just some guy. You're not. You're someone who builds things that matter. Someone who sees people. Someone who still believes that doing good is worth the effort. She pushed off the desk, walked closer. I want to invest in TechBridge because it's a good investment, but I also want to invest in it because working with you reminds me that there's more to life than quarterly earnings reports. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. The air in the office felt charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. I should go, he said finally. Review the term sheet. Talk to my team. Yes, you should. But neither of them moved. Victoria, Ethan said quietly, what are we doing here? I don't know. She looked as uncertain as he'd ever seen her. I don't know what this is. A business partnership, a friendship, something else. I'm not good at this. At what? At letting people in. At being anything other than the Ice Queen. She wrapped her arms around herself. I've spent 20 years building walls and you walked right through them without even trying. Maybe that's because I wasn't trying to get through. I was just trying to help. I know. That's what scares me. Ethan set the folder down on her desk and stepped closer. I'm scared too. I haven't let anyone close since Emma died. It feels like a betrayal, even thinking about it. Is it a betrayal? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe it's just grief making me feel guilty for being alive. Victoria reached out, hesitated, then took his hand. Her fingers were cold despite the warmth of the office. I don't have answers. I don't have a plan. I just know that when I'm around you, I feel less empty. Same. They stood there holding hands in a corner office overlooking Chicago, two people who'd spent so long being strong that they'd forgotten how to be vulnerable. The moment stretched, became something else, something fragile and new. Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His sister, reminding him to pick up Lily from school. I have to go, he said. I know. But Victoria didn't let go of his hand. Not yet. Have dinner with me, she said. Not a business dinner, just dinner. You and me and no term sheets or pitch decks or investment committees. When? Friday. I'll cook. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You cook? I used to, before I forgot how to be a person. A small smile. Fair warning, it might be terrible. I have a 7-year-old. I'm used to terrible cooking. Then it's a date. She released his hand, stepped back, restored some of the professional distance. Margaret will send you my address. You're not going to just show up at my apartment unannounced? I could. Would you prefer that? Honestly? I kind of like the mystery of not knowing if you're going to appear. Victoria laughed, that genuine laugh he was starting to recognize. Get out of my office, Ethan Cole. Yes, ma'am. He grabbed the folder and headed for the door. As he reached for the handle, Victoria called out. Ethan? He turned. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Same to you. He left, and Victoria stood alone in her office, looking at her hand where Ethan's had been, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Friday arrived like a deadline. Ethan spent the entire day anxious, trying to work but mostly just staring at his computer screen. His sister had agreed to watch Lily overnight. "It's about damn time you had a life," she'd said. And now he was standing in front of his closet trying to figure out what the hell you wore to dinner at a billionaire's penthouse when you weren't sure if it was a date or just two broken people sharing a meal. He settled on jeans and a button-down shirt, casual but not sloppy. He drove to Victoria's building, gave his name to the doorman who definitely remembered him from the gala night, and rode the elevator to the penthouse feeling like he was heading into something he couldn't back out of. The elevator opened directly into her apartment. Ethan stepped out and stopped. The space was stunning. High ceilings, modern furniture, art that probably belonged in museums. But it was also sterile. There were no personal photos, no clutter, no signs that anyone actually lived here. It looked like a showroom. Victoria appeared from what he assumed was the kitchen, wearing jeans and a cashmere sweater. No makeup, hair down. She looked younger, more real. "You came," she said. "You thought I wouldn't?" "I thought you might come to your senses and run the other direction." "I considered it," she smiled. "Honest. I like that. Come on, I'm attempting something with chicken that may or may not be edible." He followed her into the kitchen, which was massive and gleaming and looked like it had never been used. Victoria was standing over a pan, poking at what appeared to be chicken breasts with a wooden spoon. "So," Ethan said, "you need help?" "Desperately. I haven't cooked in 15 years. I forgot that chicken doesn't come pre-grilled." He stepped up beside her, assessed the situation. The chicken was burning on one side and raw on the other. "Okay. First, lower the heat." "Lower, but then it won't cook." "It'll cook, just slower, and more evenly." She adjusted the burner. He guided her through flipping the chicken, seasoning it properly, letting it rest before cutting into it. They moved around each other in the kitchen, and slowly the disaster started to look like an actual meal. "You're good at this," Victoria said. "I have a kid. You learn to cook or you go broke buying takeout." "I buy takeout for every meal." "Every meal?" "I have a standing order with 4 different restaurants. They rotate." "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." "It's efficient." "It's lonely." Victoria went quiet. They finished cooking in silence, plated the food, and sat down at her dining table, which probably sat 12 but felt enormous with just the two of them. The chicken was decent. The vegetables were overcooked but edible. They ate and talked about nothing important. Lily's soccer team, the weather, a book Victoria was reading, surface stuff, safe stuff. Then Victoria set down her fork and said, "Tell me about Emma." Ethan wasn't expecting that. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. What she was like, how you met, what you miss most." So he told her. About meeting Emma in college, both of them studying computer science until she switched to education because she wanted to make a difference. About their tiny wedding in her parents' backyard. About Lily's birth, and how Emma had been terrified she'd be a terrible mother but turned out to be amazing at it. About the little things, how she sang off key in the shower, how she left post-it notes with terrible puns around the house, how she could make friends with literally anyone. "She sounds perfect," Victoria said. She wasn't. She was stubborn as hell, always late, terrible with money. She'd start projects and never finish them. Our garage is still full of half-done crafts. Ethan smiled. But she was perfect for me. She made me braver, more open. She saw the best in everyone, including me. "Do you think she'd approve of this? Of us?" "There's an us?" Victoria held his gaze. "I don't know. Is there?" Ethan thought about it, about loyalty and grief and guilt, about the fact that Emma had been dead for 3 years and he was still here, still living, still allowed to feel things for other people. "I think Emma would want me to be happy," he said carefully. "But I don't know if I know how to do that anymore." "Neither do I." Victoria reached across the table, found his hand again. "But maybe we could figure it out together. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 people trying to remember what it's like to be human." "I can do that." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They cleared the dishes together, loaded the dishwasher, or Ethan loaded it while Victoria watched and made sarcastic comments about his organizational system. Then they moved to the living room, sat on the couch with the kind of careful distance people maintain when they're not sure what comes next. "I should probably go," Ethan said, even though he didn't want to. You should, Victoria agreed, but she didn't move either. They sat there in the silence, and then Victoria shifted closer. Not dramatically, just a few inches. Ethan closed the rest of the distance. They were sitting close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive and subtle. I haven't done this in a long time, Victoria said quietly. Done what? Any of it. Just sitting with someone, talking, feeling like maybe I'm not completely alone in the world. You're not. She turned to look at him, and the vulnerability in her eyes made his chest ache. Promise? Promise. Victoria leaned in. Ethan met her halfway. The kiss was soft, tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking something. When they pulled apart, Victoria's eyes were bright. That was, she started. Yeah, Ethan finished. They sat there, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. And for the first time in years, neither of them felt quite so empty. Ethan didn't tell anyone about the kiss. Not his sister, not his team, not even himself most of the time. It existed in a separate compartment of his life, something he could take out and examine in quiet moments, but didn't quite know what to do with. Victoria texted him the next morning, just a simple "thank you for last night," and he'd responded with "thank you too," and that had been it. No grand declarations, no defining the relationship, just two people acknowledging that something had shifted. The investment went through. The committee voted unanimously, the paperwork was signed, and suddenly TechBridge Solutions had $2 million and a seat at the big kids table. Ethan hired 3 new developers, leased actual office space instead of working from his apartment, and started conversations with school districts across the Midwest. The work consumed him in the best possible way, but Victoria was always there, hovering at the edge of his consciousness. She'd text him articles about accessibility technology, or random observations about her day, or just a question mark when he hadn't responded in a while. They fell into a rhythm: coffee every Tuesday morning at the terrible shop on Clark Street, quick lunches when their schedules aligned, late-night phone calls when Victoria couldn't sleep and Ethan was still working. 3 weeks after their dinner, Victoria called him at 11 p.m. "I'm having a crisis," she said without preamble. Ethan set down his laptop. He'd been reviewing code, and his eyes were burning. What kind of crisis? The existential kind. I'm sitting in my office looking at a contract for a land development deal in Cleveland, and I can't remember why I'm doing any of this. The deal or your entire career? Both, either. I don't know. He heard her moving around, the sound of a chair scraping. Why do we do this, Ethan? Build companies, make money, acquire more companies, make more money. For what? You tell me. I used to know. After my father died, I wanted to prove I could run his company better than he did, and I have. Hale Industries is worth 10 times what it was when I took over. But he's been dead for 15 years, and I'm still trying to prove something to a man who isn't here to see it. Ethan walked over to his window. His apartment overlooked an alley and a Thai restaurant, nothing like Victoria's view. But it was home. Maybe you're not trying to prove it to him anymore. Maybe you're trying to prove it to yourself. Prove what? That you matter. That your life means something beyond just existing. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Victoria laughed, but it sounded hollow. When did you become a therapist? When I spent 2 years in actual therapy after Emma died. Did it help? Sometimes. Other times I just sat there crying while a very patient woman handed me tissues and told me it was okay to be a mess. I don't cry. I know, that's probably a problem. Fuck you. But there was no heat in it. I'm serious, though, this deal. It's worth $40 million to Hale Industries, but it's going to displace 200 families. Low-income housing. They'll get relocation assistance, but it won't be enough. It never is. And I'm sitting here trying to justify it because that's what developers do. We see value where other people see homes, but I can't stop thinking about those 200 families. Ethan sat down on his couch. So don't do the deal. It's not that simple. Why not? You're the CEO. You can walk away. The board expects it. The shareholders expect it. We've already invested 6 months in due diligence, and 200 families will be homeless. They won't be homeless. They'll be relocated. To where? Places they can afford? In neighborhoods where their kids can stay in the same schools? Victoria went quiet again. Ethan could almost hear her thinking, recalculating, trying to find a solution that worked for everyone. That was the thing about her. She wanted to be ruthless. wanted to be the ice queen, but underneath all that was someone who actually gave a damn. There has to be a way, she said finally, a compromise. Maybe we can include affordable housing in the new development. Set aside 20% of the units for low-income tenants. Will the board go for that? Probably not. It cuts into profit margins. Then make them go for it. You're Victoria Hale. You don't ask permission. She laughed again, but this time it sounded real. You're a bad influence on me. Good. You need one. They stayed on the phone for another hour, talking through possibilities, sketching out a plan that might actually work. By the time they hung up, it was past midnight, and Ethan's eyes were crossing from exhaustion. But he felt good, useful, like maybe he wasn't just building software. He was helping Victoria build a version of herself she could actually live with. The next morning, his sister showed up at his apartment unannounced. Sarah was 2 years older than Ethan, a family law attorney with 3 kids of her own, and the kind of no-bullshit energy that made her excellent at her job and occasionally exhausting as a sibling. We need to talk, she said, pushing past him into the apartment. Good morning to you too. Don't give me that. Lily told me you've been smiling at your phone. Ethan closed the door. So? So you never smile at your phone, you barely smile at actual humans. Sarah dropped onto his couch, fixed him with the look that had probably made opposing counsel weep. Who is she? There's no she. Bullshit. Lily said you've been happy but also weird, which in 7-year-old speak means you're seeing someone. Ethan rubbed his face. He'd gotten maybe 4 hours of sleep. It's complicated. It's always complicated. Who is she? Victoria Hale. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. The Ice Queen? The billionaire who had a meltdown at the Sinclair Gala? She's not the Ice Queen. She's just guarded. Ethan. Sarah's voice softened. I'm not judging. I'm glad you're moving on, but are you sure this is a good idea? You and a billionaire CEO, you're in completely different worlds. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks like a disaster waiting to happen. She's going to get bored or realize you don't fit into her life, and you're going to get hurt. Maybe. Or maybe we're both just trying to be less lonely. Sarah studied him for a long moment. You really like her. I really like her. Does she like you back, or are you her charity project? Jesus, Sarah. I'm serious. Rich people do that. They find some noble cause or person to make them feel better about themselves, and then they move on when the novelty wears off. Ethan thought about Victoria sitting in her office at midnight, agonizing over 200 families she'd never met, about the way she'd kissed him, like she was afraid he'd disappear, about the vulnerability in her eyes when she'd asked him to promise she wasn't alone. She's not like that, he said. Okay. Sarah stood, walked over to him. I trust your judgment, but be careful. You've been through enough. I know. She hugged him, fierce and quick. Bring her to Sunday dinner sometime. I want to meet the woman who's got my brother smiling at his phone. That sounds like a terrible idea. It's a great idea. My kids will terrorize her and we'll see what she's really made of. After Sarah left, Ethan texted Victoria. My sister wants you to come to Sunday dinner. The response came 30 seconds later. Absolutely not. Scared? Terrified. I don't do family dinners. Neither did I until my sister forced me. Now it's a weekly nightmare. Why would I voluntarily subject myself to that? Because I'll be there. And because my niece makes the world's best brownies. I'm being bribed with baked goods? Is it working? There was a longer pause this time. What should I bring? Ethan smiled at his phone. Sunday dinner at Sarah's house was controlled chaos. Her 3 kids, ages 9, 6, and 3, treated Ethan like a jungle gym the second he walked in, and he spent the first 10 minutes being climbed on while Sarah's husband Mark tried to rescue the pot roast from the oven before it turned into charcoal. Victoria arrived exactly 15 minutes late, which Ethan suspected was intentional. She stood on the porch holding a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Sarah's mortgage payment, looking like she was about to face a firing squad. You can still run, Ethan said quietly when he answered the door. Don't tempt me. But she stepped inside and Ethan caught the slight tremor in her hands as she straightened her sweater. Sarah appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. You must be Victoria. I'm Sarah. Welcome to the madhouse. Thank you for having me. Victoria handed her the wine. I wasn't sure what to bring. Sarah looked at the label and barely suppressed a laugh. This is... Wow. This is definitely more than we deserve. Come on in. Fair warning, my kids are feral. As if on cue, the 9-year-old, Sophie, came barreling around the corner and skidded to a stop when she saw Victoria. Are you Uncle Ethan's girlfriend? Sophie, Sarah warned. What? Dad said she might be? Victoria looked at Ethan, eyebrow raised. He shrugged helplessly. I'm a friend, Victoria said carefully. Do you kiss? Sophie? It's a valid question. Victoria crouched down to Sophie's level, and Ethan watched something shift in her expression. Do you always ask strangers about their personal lives? My mom says I'm precocious. Your mom is being polite. I'd say you're nosy. Sophie grinned. I like you. Well, that makes one of us. The kid laughed and ran off, and Victoria stood back up, looking slightly shell-shocked. Does that happen often? Every Sunday, Ethan said. You get used to it. Dinner was loud and messy, and nothing like the carefully orchestrated meals Victoria was used to. The 3-year-old threw mashed potatoes. The 6-year-old wouldn't eat anything green. Sophie interrogated Victoria about everything from her job to her shoe size. And somehow, gradually, Victoria started to relax. She told Sophie about running a company, simplifying it into terms a 9-year-old could understand. She helped Mark set the table. She even laughed when the 3-year-old, Jackson, smeared gravy on her very expensive sweater. After dinner, while the kids destroyed the living room and the adults cleaned up, Sarah cornered Ethan in the kitchen. Okay, she said. I take it back. She's good. Yeah? She's terrified, but she's trying, and she looks at you like you hung the moon, so that's something. She does not. Ethan, I'm a lawyer. I read people for a living. That woman is falling for you hard. Ethan glanced into the living room where Victoria was sitting on the floor, letting Jackson show her his dinosaur collection. She looked completely out of her element and somehow perfect anyway. I think I'm falling for her too, he admitted. Good. You deserve this. Just don't fuck it up. When have I ever fucked anything up? Sarah gave him a look. Do you want the list alphabetically or chronologically? Later, Ethan drove Victoria back to her building. She was quiet in the passenger seat, staring out the window at the city sliding past. That was overwhelming, she said finally. I know, I'm sorry. Sarah's family is a lot. No, I mean, yes, they are. But that's not what I meant. She turned to look at him. I can't remember the last time I sat at a table with people who weren't trying to get something from me. Your sister didn't care that I'm rich. Her kids didn't know who I was. They just treated me like a person. You are a person. I forget sometimes. She was quiet for a moment. My mother used to have Sunday dinners, before my father died, before everything got complicated. We'd sit around the table and just talk. It was normal. I didn't realize how much I missed normal. Ethan pulled up in front of her building but didn't put the car in park. You could have that again. Normal, if you wanted it. With you? Maybe. If you're interested. Victoria reached over and took his hand. I'm interested. I'm also scared out of my mind. Same. Your wife. Do you still think about her? Every day. But it's different now. It's not the sharp grief anymore. It's more like she's part of who I am, but she's not stopping me from moving forward. Do you think she'd like me? Ethan thought about Emma, her warmth, her ability to see the best in everyone, her terrible sense of humor. I think she'd like that you make me happy. And I think she'd appreciate that you're trying to be a better person. I am trying. Victoria's voice was small. It's harder than I thought it would be. The good stuff usually is. They sat there in the car, hands linked across the center console, until the doorman started giving them looks. Finally, Victoria leaned over and kissed him, quick and soft and full of promise. Come upstairs, she said. Victoria, just to talk. I'm not ready for anything else. But I don't want to be alone tonight. So he went upstairs, and they sat on her couch talking until 2 in the morning. About their childhoods, their regrets, their fears. About what they wanted from life, and whether any of it was actually achievable. Victoria fell asleep with her head on his shoulder, and Ethan stayed until sunrise, watching the city wake up through her floor-to-ceiling windows. The Cleveland deal became Victoria's obsession. She spent weeks negotiating with the board, working with architects to redesign the development to include affordable housing, meeting with community leaders from the neighborhood that would be affected. It was exhausting and frustrating, and nothing she'd ever done before. Ethan watched her transform. The Ice Queen who'd walked into that gala started to crack, and underneath was someone passionate and driven and genuinely trying to make things better. She started coming to the terrible coffee shop more often, bringing her laptop and working alongside him while the purple-haired barista made terrible jokes and the construction workers argued about the bears. One Tuesday morning, she showed up looking defeated. "The board voted it down," she said, collapsing into the chair across from him. "The affordable housing plan. They said it wasn't financially viable. So what are you going to do?" "I don't know. I could overrule them, but that would cause a war. Or I could kill the whole deal, but then we've wasted 6 months and millions in due diligence. Or," Ethan said carefully, "you could do it anyway and deal with the consequences." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one facing a shareholder revolt." "No, I'm the guy who walked away from a stable job to build software that might help people. I'm the guy who's bad at playing it safe." He reached across the table, took her hand. "You asked me once why we do this, build companies, make money. I think the answer is that we're supposed to do something that matters. And affordable housing in Cleveland matters more than your board's profit margins." Victoria stared at him for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and called someone. "Margaret, set up an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning, and get me the contact information for every major news outlet in Chicago. I'm going to need them." She hung up and looked at Ethan. "If I'm going down fighting. That's my girl. I'm not your girl. Yet." She smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. "Yet." The next morning, Victoria stood in front of her board and announced that Hale Industries would be moving forward with the Cleveland development, including a 40% affordable housing component. When they objected, she told them she'd already leaked the story to the press. When they threatened to remove her as CEO, she reminded them that she controlled 51% of the voting shares and they couldn't touch her. It was brutal. It was public. It was everything the Ice Queen would never have done. And it worked. The story hit the news that afternoon. Chicago CEO puts people over profits. And the response was overwhelming. Community leaders praised her. Housing advocates called her a pioneer. Even the board members who'd opposed the plan had to fall in line when the positive press started rolling in. Victoria called Ethan from her office, and he could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "I think I just committed career suicide. Or you just became the kind of CEO people actually respect. My CFO is threatening to quit. Let him. You can find another CFO. You can't find another chance to do something this right." "When did you become so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't listening." She laughed, and it sounded like relief. "Come over tonight. I want to celebrate with someone who won't try to talk me out of my choices. I'll bring the terrible wine. Please don't. I have standards." That night they sat on her balcony overlooking the city, drinking wine that definitely didn't come from a grocery store, talking about everything and nothing. Victoria was different, lighter, like she'd set down a weight she'd been carrying for years. "I never thought I'd do something like this," she said, "risk everything for people I've never met." "But you did. Because of you. You make me want to be better." "You were already better. You just needed permission to show it." Victoria set down her wine glass and moved closer to him on the balcony couch. "I'm falling in love with you, Ethan Cole. And it terrifies me." His breath caught. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because everyone I've ever loved has left. My father. My mother. And I don't know if I can survive losing someone else." "You won't lose me." "You can't promise that." "No. But I can promise to show up. Every day. For as long as you'll let me." She kissed him then, and it wasn't tentative anymore. It was sure and strong and full of all the things neither of them knew how to say. They stayed on the balcony until the city lights blurred together and the wine was gone, and the only thing that mattered was the two of them, finally letting themselves fall. Over the next month, they built something real. Victoria met Lily, who immediately decided that anyone who owned a building with a doorman was the coolest person alive. They had dinner at Ethan's apartment, takeout because neither of them could cook, and Victoria sat on the floor playing Uno with a 7-year-old who cheated shamelessly. "She's good," Lily whispered to Ethan while Victoria was in the bathroom. "I like her." "Yeah?" Yeah, she's not like Mom, but that's okay. Mom would want you to be happy. Ethan's throat tightened. How'd you get so smart? Genetics? Lily grinned. Also, Aunt Sarah talks about feelings a lot. Victoria came back and they played another round of Uno, and Ethan watched the two most important people in his current life interact and felt something close to peace. But nothing good lasts without being tested. The article came out on a Thursday morning. Victoria Hale's secret romance. Billionaire, CEO, dating. Struggling entrepreneur she invested in. The photos were from Sunday dinner at Sarah's house. Someone must have tipped off the paparazzi. There was Victoria on the porch, Ethan beside her, Victoria in the car. Victoria and Ethan holding hands. The implication was clear: conflict of interest, inappropriate relationship, rich woman taking advantage of desperate man, or desperate man manipulating rich woman, depending on which gossip blog you read. Ethan's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Investors, board members, people he barely knew wanting to know if the rumors were true. TechBridge's reputation was suddenly in question. Had they really earned the investment, or was it just Victoria playing favorites? He called her immediately. I know, she said before he could speak. I'm handling it. How? I'm issuing a statement, making it clear that TechBridge was properly vetted by our investment committee, that our relationship started after the deal was finalized, that everything was above board. Will that be enough? I don't know. For the first time since he'd known her, Victoria sounded truly uncertain. But I'm not losing you over this. I'm not letting them turn something good into something dirty. What if they force you to choose, the company or me? There was a long pause. They can't force me to do anything. I'm Victoria Hale. But her voice wavered, and Ethan knew she was scared. They both were. Because this wasn't just about them anymore. It was about their reputations, their companies, the people who depended on them. The board called an emergency meeting. The press camped outside Hale Industries. And Ethan sat in his office, watching his phone blow up with messages, wondering if loving Victoria Hale was going to cost him everything he'd built. The emergency board meeting started at 9 a.m. Ethan knew because Victoria texted him at 8:55. Going in. Wish me luck. He wanted to tell her she didn't need luck, that she was Victoria Hale and she could handle anything. But his hands were shaking too badly to type, so he just sent back a heart emoji and hated himself for not being braver. His own office was a ghost town. The developers had seen the articles. They were trying to work, but Ethan could feel their anxiety radiating through the walls of the conference room where they'd gathered to pretend nothing was wrong. His phone kept buzzing, reporters wanting comments, investors wanting assurances, even a lawyer offering to represent him in what the guy called potential litigation. At 10:15, Sarah called. Are you okay? She asked. Define okay. Ethan. I'm fine, Victoria's handling it. That's not what I asked. I asked if you're okay. He closed his office door, sank into his chair. I don't know. This whole thing is falling apart, and I can't fix it. I can't protect her. I can't protect TechBridge. I'm just sitting here waiting for someone else to decide what happens to my life. That's bullshit, and you know it. You're not powerless. Sarah, I'm dating a billionaire who invested in my company. The optics are terrible, no matter how we spin it. So change the narrative. Tell your side. You're good at that. You convinced me Victoria wasn't Satan incarnate at Sunday dinner. This isn't Sunday dinner. This is the Chicago business community deciding whether I'm a con artist or just pathetic. You're neither. You're a guy who built something good and fell for someone who saw value in it. There's nothing shameful about that. Ethan rubbed his eyes. He'd barely slept. What if they make her choose? Then she chooses. And whatever she chooses, you deal with it. Sarah's voice softened. But I've seen how she looks at you. I don't think she's letting you go without a fight. After Sarah hung up, Ethan forced himself to open his laptop. He pulled up the TechBridge user testimonials, the parents whose kids could finally communicate, the teachers who'd seen their students thrive, the adults who'd regained independence through accessibility technology. This was real. This mattered. Whatever happened with Victoria, whatever the press said, none of that changed the fact that TechBridge was helping people. His phone buzzed again. Victoria, it's done. Coming to your office. Don't freak out. The don't freak out part made him immediately freak out. He stood up, sat back down, stood up again. By the time Victoria walked through the door 20 minutes later, he'd worn a path in the carpet. She looked exhausted. Her suit was still immaculate, but there were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it. "Well," she said, "that was fun." "What happened?" "I told them the truth, that the investment committee vetted TechBridge independently, that I recused myself from the final vote, that our personal relationship began after all the paperwork was signed. I showed them the timeline, the documentation, everything. And they don't care. Half of them think I'm lying, the other half think I'm compromised. My CFO officially resigned. 3 board members are calling for my removal as CEO. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Victoria, I'm not finished." She pushed off the door, walked to his desk. "I also told them that if they try to force me out, I'll take this to the press myself. I'll show every email, every document, every piece of evidence that proves TechBridge earned that investment on merit. And I'll make sure everyone knows that the board cares more about optics than actual ethics." "You threatened them." "I gave them a choice. Accept that I'm a grown woman who can make professional and personal decisions independently, or deal with the fallout of trying to control me." "What did they say?" Victoria smiled, but it was tight. "They tabled the discussion, which in board speak means they're scared and stalling." Ethan came around the desk, took her hands. They were ice cold despite the warm office. "You didn't have to do that. You could have just cut ties with TechBridge, protected yourself. And lose the best thing that's happened to me in years? No." She squeezed his hands. "I'm not letting them take this from me. From us. This could destroy your career. So could a lot of things. I choose this." He kissed her then, hard and grateful and desperate. When they broke apart, Victoria was smiling for real. "We're going to get us through this," she said. "But I need you to trust me." "I do trust you." "Good. Because I'm about to do something either very smart or very stupid." She pulled out her phone and made a call. "Margaret, get me a meeting with Rebecca Torrance at the Tribune, today if possible. Tell her I'm ready to give her an exclusive." Ethan's eyes widened. "You're going to the press? I'm controlling the narrative before someone else does." She ended the call. "Rebecca's fair. She'll actually listen instead of just writing clickbait. And if this backfires, then we deal with it together." The interview happened that afternoon in a conference room at the Tribune. Rebecca Torrance was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, exactly the kind of journalist who could either save you or bury you depending on what she found. Victoria had asked Ethan to come with her. He sat beside her at the conference table while Rebecca set up a recorder and pulled out a notebook. "So," Rebecca said, "Chicago's Ice Queen falls for a tech entrepreneur. That's quite a story." "It's not a story," Victoria said. "It's my life." "Fair enough. But you understand why people are interested. The optics are bad because people assume women in power can't make decisions without compromising their judgment. If I were a man, this would be a non-issue." Rebecca's pen paused. "You're playing the gender card?" "I'm stating facts. When male CEOs date or marry people they've done business with, nobody questions their competence. But I get involved with someone and suddenly my entire career is suspect." "To be fair, you did invest $2 million in his company. After my investment committee vetted it. After they voted unanimously to fund it. After every piece of due diligence came back positive." Victoria slid a folder across the table. "Those are the documents, timeline, emails, committee notes. You'll see that I recused myself from the final decision specifically to avoid any appearance of impropriety." Rebecca flipped through the folder, frowning. "This is thorough. I run a billion-dollar company. Thorough is what I do." "So when did the personal relationship begin?" Victoria glanced at Ethan. He nodded slightly. "Your story, your call." "The night of the Sinclair Gala," Victoria said, "I had what the press generously called a public meltdown. Ethan drove me home. We started talking. Coffee turned into friendship, turned into something more." She paused. "I know how it looks. Rich CEO, struggling entrepreneur, obvious power imbalance. But that's not what this is." What is it then? Two people who were both drowning in different ways, finding each other? Victoria's voice was steady. I lost my mother 6 months ago. I was running on autopilot, going through the motions of being successful without actually living. Ethan lost his wife 3 years ago. He was raising his daughter alone, trying to build something meaningful. We understood each other's grief. We didn't have to pretend to be okay. Rebecca looked at Ethan. You've been quiet. She's better with words than I am, Ethan said. Try anyway. He took a breath. When I met Victoria, I saw someone who was falling apart and refusing to admit it. I helped because that's what you do when someone needs help. I didn't know who she was. I didn't care about her money or her connections. I just saw a person who was hurting. And the investment came later, after we'd been talking for weeks, after she'd seen what TechBridge actually does. He pulled out his phone, showed Rebecca the app interface. We build accessibility software for people with disabilities. Our users are mostly kids and adults who can't use standard technology. Victoria's investment lets us scale that, reach more people, help more families. That's the story. Not some scandal about improper relationships. Rebecca made notes, asked more questions. Victoria answered with data and documentation. Ethan told stories about users whose lives had changed. An hour passed, then 2. By the end, Rebecca sat back and studied them both. This is either the most authentic thing I've heard in years or the best con job, she said. It's authentic, Victoria said flatly, and you know it or you wouldn't still be here. Rebecca smiled slightly. True. One more question. What happens if the board forces you out? If you have to choose between Hale Industries and this relationship? Victoria didn't hesitate. I choose him. The article ran 3 days later. The Woman Behind the Ice, Victoria Hale on love, loss, and building something real. It was fair, thorough, and exactly what they needed. Rebecca had included the documentation, interviewed members of the investment committee, even talked to TechBridge users. The narrative shifted from scandal to human interest. By the time the weekend hit, the tide had turned. But the board was still a problem. They scheduled another meeting for Monday morning. Victoria spent the weekend preparing, pulling together more evidence, building her case. Ethan wanted to help, but there was nothing he could do except watch her work and try not to feel useless. Sunday dinner at Sarah's was subdued. The kids sensed something was wrong and were uncharacteristically quiet. Victoria picked at her food, clearly distracted. You should eat, Sarah said gently. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. I'm not hungry. Victoria, Sarah's lawyer voice came out. You need to take care of yourself. Skipping meals won't help you win this fight. I know. Victoria set down her fork. What if I lose? What if they force me out anyway? Then you start over, Ethan said. You're Victoria Hale. You built one empire. You can build another. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one about to lose everything. Neither are you. The worst case is you lose the company. You don't lose yourself. You don't lose us. Victoria looked at him, and her eyes were wet. I've spent my whole life building Hale Industries. It's all I have. That's not true anymore. Lily spoke up from across the table. She'd been quiet all dinner, but now she was staring at Victoria with that intense 7-year-old honesty. You have us now. Me and Dad and Aunt Sarah and everyone. That's worth more than a company. The table went silent. Victoria stared at Lily, something breaking in her expression. Out of the mouths of babes, Sarah murmured. Victoria stood abruptly, walked to the bathroom. Sarah gave Ethan a look. Go after her. So he did. He found her in the hallway, leaning against the wall, crying quietly. He'd never seen her cry before. Not at the gala, not during any of this mess. But now the tears were falling and she wasn't trying to stop them. I'm sorry, she said. I'm a mess. You're human. He pulled her into his arms. And Lily's right. You have us. Win or lose tomorrow, that doesn't change. I don't know how to lose gracefully. Then lose ugly. Throw things. Yell at your board. Burn bridges if you have to. But don't think for a second that losing the company means losing everything. She clung to him, and he held her until the tears stopped. When they went back to the table, Lily gave Victoria a fierce hug, and something in Victoria's face softened in a way Ethan had never seen before. Monday morning came too fast. Victoria met Ethan for coffee at their terrible shop before the board meeting. The purple-haired barista took one look at her and made the coffee extra strong. "Big day?" the barista asked. "You could say that," Victoria replied. "Well, good luck. And if it goes badly, we've got whiskey in the back." Victoria actually laughed. "I'll keep that in mind." They sat at their usual table. Victoria had her tablet open, reviewing notes she'd probably memorized by now. Ethan watched her, trying to find the right words. "Whatever happens today," he said finally, "I'm proud of you." She looked up. "For what?" "For fighting, for not backing down, for choosing what you actually want instead of what everyone expects you to want." "I haven't won yet." "You already did. The Victoria Hale who walked into that gala wouldn't have fought this hard for anything that wasn't about money or power. You're fighting for something real now. That's the win." She reached across the table, took his hand. "If I lose the company, I'm going to be impossible to live with for a while." "I can handle impossible." "I'm serious. I'm going to spiral and second-guess everything and probably try to push you away." "I can handle that too." "Why? Why are you willing to put up with all of this?" Ethan squeezed her hand. "Because I love you. And because you're worth fighting for, even when you don't believe it yourself." Victoria's breath caught. "You love me?" "Yeah, I do." "That's inconvenient." "I know. I love you too, which is even more inconvenient." They sat there holding hands across a coffee-stained table in a shop that called large coffees big boys. And for just a moment, the board meeting didn't matter. The press didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the two of them, finally saying what they'd both been feeling for weeks. "I have to go," Victoria said eventually. "I know. Wish me luck?" "You don't need it, but good luck anyway." She kissed him, quick and hard, and then she was gone. Ethan sat in his office, unable to work, unable to think about anything except Victoria facing down her board. The minutes crawled. He checked his phone obsessively. Nothing. At 11:30, his phone rang. Margaret. "Mr. Cole? Miss Hale asked me to call you. The board meeting just ended." His heart stopped. "And?" "She'd like you to come to her office. Now, if possible." Is everything okay?" "She didn't say. Just that she needs to see you." Ethan was out the door before Margaret finished speaking. He drove to Hale Industries, breaking at least 3 traffic laws, took the elevator to the executive floor, and found Margaret waiting outside Victoria's office. "She's inside," Margaret said. Her expression was unreadable. "Go ahead in." Ethan opened the door. Victoria was standing by her windows, looking out at the city. She didn't turn when he entered. "Victoria?" His voice cracked. "What happened?" "They gave me an ultimatum." Her voice was flat. "Step down as CEO voluntarily, or they'd force me out and make it as public and ugly as possible." "No." "I told them to go to hell." Now she turned and her eyes were blazing. "I told them I built this company from the ground up, that I've tripled its value in 10 years, and they could take their ultimatum and shove it. Then I reminded them that I control 51% of voting shares, which means they can't actually force me out no matter how much they want to." Ethan felt his knees go weak with relief. "So you won?" "Not exactly. 3 board members resigned on the spot. My CFO's replacement is threatening to quit before he even starts. Half my executive team is furious. I've probably damaged relationships that took years to build." "But you're still CEO." "But I'm still CEO." She crossed to him, took his hands. "I chose this. I chose you. I chose us. And I'm terrified I made the wrong choice." "You didn't." "You can't know that." "I can, because even if Hale Industries falls apart, even if you lose everything, you'll still have something real, something that matters." He pulled her close. "You'll have me. You'll have Lily. You'll have Sunday dinners and terrible coffee and all the messy, imperfect stuff that actually makes life worth living." Victoria buried her face in his shoulder. "I've never done this before. Put myself first. Chosen something just because I wanted it. How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Liberating, both." They stood there in her office, holding each other while Chicago stretched out below them. Somewhere in the building, board members were probably plotting. Executives were updating resumes. The press was waiting for the next chapter of the story. But in that moment, none of it mattered. What now? Ethan asked. Now? I rebuild. I find board members who actually support what I'm trying to do. I make Hale Industries into a company I can be proud of, not just profitable. She pulled back to look at him. And I figure out how to balance running a billion-dollar company with having an actual life. That sounds hard. It's going to be impossible. Good thing you're good at impossible things. She smiled, real and bright and completely without armor. I'm going to need help. I'm here. I mean it. I'm going to be a disaster at this whole relationship thing. I'm going to work too much and forget important dates and probably try to solve emotional problems with spreadsheets. And I'm going to be overprotective and awkward at fancy events and let Lily manipulate both of us. Sounds perfect. Sounds like a mess. Same thing. They kissed, and it felt like a promise. Not the fairy tale kind where everything works out perfectly. The real kind, where two broken people decided to be broken together and see if they could build something whole. 3 months later, Ethan stood in the conference room at TechBridge's new office. Actual office space with real furniture and a view that didn't include a dumpster. Watching his team present their quarterly results to Victoria and 2 new Hale Industries board members she'd recruited. The numbers were good. Great, actually. They doubled their user base, partnered with 5 new school districts, and started development on a text-to-speech module that could help nonverbal kids communicate more naturally. Victoria asked questions, took notes, and looked every bit the professional investor. But when she caught Ethan's eye across the table, she smiled, and it was just for him. After the meeting, they walked to the coffee shop. It was Tuesday, their standing date, and the purple-haired barista had their orders ready before they reached the counter. 2 big boys, extra terrible, she announced. You're my hero, Ethan said, dropping a 5 in the tip jar. They sat at their usual table. Victoria pulled out her tablet, but she didn't open it. Something on your mind? Ethan asked. Lily's birthday is next week. I know, we're doing the roller skating party. You're still coming, right? Wouldn't miss it. But I was thinking, she hesitated. What if I threw her a second party? At my place. Small thing, just family. Ethan set down his coffee. You want to host a birthday party for my daughter. Our daughter. Victoria caught herself. I mean, not legally, but she's part of my life now, part of us. And I want to do something special for her. She's going to ask for a pony. I'm aware. I've already researched stables in the area. Victoria, no. It's a very small pony. No ponies. Fine. But I'm getting her something good. They argued about it good-naturedly, the way they argued about everything now, with affection and humor and the understanding that they were building something neither of them had expected, but both of them needed. That Sunday, Victoria showed up to Sarah's house with a homemade cake. It was lopsided and the frosting was a disaster, but she'd made it herself, and the kids thought it was the best thing they'd ever seen. You made this? Sarah asked, clearly shocked. I'm learning to cook, Victoria said. Badly, but I'm learning. Character growth, Sarah said approvingly. I like it. After dinner, Ethan and Victoria took a walk around Sarah's neighborhood. It was early fall, the air crisp, leaves just starting to turn. Victoria slipped her hand into his. I've been thinking, she said. Dangerous. Shut up. I've been thinking about what comes next, for us. And I don't know. I've never been good at long-term planning in my personal life, but I know I want you in it, you and Lily, whatever that looks like. Ethan stopped walking, turned to face her. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. Are you asking me to move in with you? Maybe, eventually, or maybe you're asking me to move in with you. Or maybe we find somewhere new that's ours. I don't know the logistics. She met his eyes. I just know that I don't want to keep saying goodbye at the end of every day. My apartment has 1 bathroom and Lily's room is basically a closet. Your apartment is perfect because you're in it. Your place has a doorman and a view of the lake. My place is lonely without you. They stood there on the sidewalk, 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their old lives and decided to build something new. Let's start slow, Ethan said. More sleepovers. Maybe I keep some clothes at your place. Maybe you keep some stuff at mine. We figure it out as we go. That sounds reasonable and healthy. I know. I'm full of surprises. Victoria laughed and kissed him, and somewhere in Sarah's house, Lily was probably telling her cousins that her dad had a girlfriend and it was going to be fine, better than fine. It was going to be good. 6 months after that, Hale Industries announced a new initiative, the Accessible Technology Fund, a $50 million commitment to investing in companies that built technology for underserved communities. Victoria stood at the press conference. Flanking her were Ethan and 3 other entrepreneurs whose companies focused on everything from affordable healthcare devices to educational software for rural schools. The press asked about TechBridge, about conflict of interest, about whether this was just good PR. Victoria answered every question with data and documentation and the kind of fierce conviction that made it clear she didn't give a damn what they thought. "This isn't charity," she said. "This is good business. The entrepreneurs in this room are solving real problems for real people. That's sustainable. That's the future. And Hale Industries is going to be part of making it happen." Afterward, in the quiet of Victoria's office, Ethan pulled her into a hug. "You did good today," he said. "We did good. This was your idea. This was us. Together." She rested her head on his shoulder, and they stood there in the late afternoon light, 2 people who'd been invisible for different reasons, finding each other and refusing to let go. Over the next year, life settled into something that felt almost normal. TechBridge expanded to 12 employees and partnerships in 8 states. Victoria restructured Hale Industries' board, brought in people who actually shared her vision for impact investing, and started sleeping more than 4 hours a night. Ethan's sister stopped asking when they were getting married and started just assuming they eventually would. Lily declared that having Victoria around was pretty cool, I guess, which in 7-year-old speak meant she'd completely accepted Victoria as part of their family. They had their fights. Victoria still worked too much. Ethan still second-guessed himself. They argued about money and boundaries, and whether it was appropriate to buy an 8-year-old a laptop that cost more than most people's monthly rent. But they also had Tuesday morning coffee dates and Sunday dinners and quiet evenings where they just existed together without needing to fill the silence. One night, almost 2 years after the gala, Victoria stayed late at Ethan's apartment. Lily was asleep, and they were on the couch, Victoria's head on his chest, half watching a documentary neither of them cared about. "I'm happy," Victoria said suddenly. Yeah, I didn't think I'd ever feel this way again, after my mother died, after everything. But I'm happy." Ethan kissed the top of her head. "Me too. We're good together." "We are." "So?" Victoria sat up, looked at him seriously. "Move in with me. For real, you and Lily. Not just keeping clothes at each other's places, actually living together." Ethan's heart kicked. "That's a big step." "I know, but we're ready. And Lily needs a bigger bedroom. And I need you both around all the time because apparently I'm codependent now." "You're not codependent. You're just human." "Same thing." He laughed and pulled her back against him. "Okay, yeah, let's do it." "Really? Really? But we're getting a place together. Not your penthouse, not my apartment. Somewhere that's ours." "Deal." They found a house in Lincoln Park 3 months later. It wasn't huge, nothing compared to Victoria's penthouse, but it had a backyard for Lily and a home office for each of them, and a kitchen where they could attempt to cook together without burning things down. Moving day was chaos. Sarah's kids helped by being completely unhelpful. Victoria tried to organize everything with spreadsheets. Lily ran around claiming rooms like she was planting flags. That first night, after the movers left and the boxes were still everywhere, and they'd ordered pizza because neither of them had energy to cook, they sat on the floor of their new living room. Lily was between them, already half asleep, and Ethan looked at Victoria across their daughter's head and felt something he hadn't felt since Emma died. Complete. Not perfect. Not fixed. Not without grief or fear or uncertainty. But complete. Whole in a way that had nothing to do with having all the answers and everything to do with having the right people beside him. "This is good," he said quietly. Victoria met his eyes and smiled. "This is everything." And in that moment, in a half-unpacked house in Chicago, with a sleeping child between them and a future full of possibility ahead, it was. The Ice Queen who'd fallen apart at a charity gala had found her way back to being human. The invisible entrepreneur who'd spent 3 years in grief had found his way back to living. And together, they'd built something neither of them had been looking for, but both of them needed. Something real. something lasting, something worth fighting for.